The great judgment is upon us. The great division is crystal clear. To the awake, welcome, light warrior. To the woke, welcome to your recruitment into your initiation. To the completely asleep, great. Greenhorns aren't MK'd. It'll be easier for you to receive insight and wisdom. This channel is created through peace, love, forgiveness, and compassion. To the trolls, you're also welcome. It'll be an uncomfortable experience unless you're trolling with the intention to learn something. For the light will always illuminate the dark. Cheers to hoping you'll realize you've been rooting for the wrong team. The great shift is upon us. We're not the same people we once were. The tolerable has become intolerable. The silenced are seeking their truth and finding their voices. Picking and choosing daily battles are no longer choices but a means to survival. The initiation is about reclaiming the power of our voices, realizing some situations no longer deserve our time, energy, and focus. My name is Sarah, and I will be your host. Welcome to, if you're just about to go to sleep at night, sweetest of dreams, whoever's waking up, grand rising. And to those of you who are in that lull of the middle of the day and just need a little bit of a break, we've got your back. Just pick one of those songs out from the middle of your head and you'll be A-okay. Anyway, today I have two guests with me. I have a 19-year-old starting out musician, and I have a 52-year-old seasoned musician. And I'd like to place upon them this tiff between Motley Crue, like Nikki Sixx and Eddie Veddar, and they don't know, and neither of them know nothing about it. So I'd like to present it, and I would like to get Jacob's opinion of how he feels about what's going on, and then I would like to get Doug to give Jake his wisdom of how, and I want to hear the two of them talk. It's not going to be me talking so much, it's going to be these two. So, you guys ready to hear? All right. So, there's been tension between Motley Crue's Nikki Sixx and Pearl Jam's Eddie Veddar. It all went down a couple of months ago. Nikki couldn't understand why Eddie wanted to take a shot at Motley Crue. Eddie gave an interview with the New York Times, and in the interview, he used it as an opportunity to basically shit on the people who helped pave the way before him. And this is what he said during the interview. He said, I used to work in San Diego loading gear at a club. I'd end up being at shows that I wouldn't have chosen to go to. Bands that monopolized late 80s MTV. The metal bands that I'm trying to be nice, that I despise. Girls, 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 and Motley Crue. Fuck you. I hated it. I hated how it made the fellas look. I hated how it made the women look. It felt so vacuous. Just so you know, I can't say this word. Vacuous, okay? It means having or showing lack of thought or intelligence, and it's mindless. So basically, what Eddie Veddar is saying about Motley Crue is that they show lack of thought, of intelligence, and mindless. Eddie Veddar continued, Guns N' Roses came out and, thank God, at least had some teeth. But I'm circling back to say that one thing that I appreciated was that in Seattle and the alternative crowd, the girls could wear their combat boots and sweaters, and their hair looked like Cat Powers and not Heather Locklear's. Nothing against her. They weren't selling themselves short. They could have an opinion and be respected. I think that's a change that lasted. It sounds so trite. Trite? That is a remark, opinion, or idea which is overused and consequently of little importance, lacking originality or freshness. Eddie continued, but before that, it was bustiers. The only person who wore bustier in the 90s that I could appreciate was Perry Farrell. Okay, so then Nikki Sixx took to his Twitter to share his feelings about Pearl Jam's Eddie Veddar's comments, responding, made me laugh today reading how much the singer of Pearl Jam hated on Motley Crue. Now considering that they're one of the most boring bands in history is kind of a compliment, isn't it? Adding insult to injury, Nikki compared Eddie's vocal techniques to singing with marbles in your mouth. In addition to Pearl Jam's fan's response, who tweeted in defense of Veddar. Sixx said, "Remember, there were zillions of brown-haired bands for brown-haired fans. Go find them. You will know them by the bored look on their face." Nikki Sixx, in a recent video with a Brazilian music critic, discussed the feud with Eddie Veddar, explaining why he decided to respond to those disses. And he said, "I'm not trying to be that guy that wrote Bastard, because I'm not the guy who wrote Bastard. I wrote that song about someone that ripped us off. I am the guy that if you F with me, I will F with you back. That's what this song is about. You take a swipe at my band, and I'll take a swipe at your band. You try to hurt my family, which is my band, I will try to hurt you. That's not something to be proud about." Nikki was then asked specifically about his criticism of Pearl Jam and why he responded, and he said, "I remember going to MTV with a copy of Nevermind before it came out, which was Nirvana. Me and Tommy were out there, and we were like, hey, you got to check this band out. Hey, you got to check this band out." And we knew they were the upcoming bands. Excuse me. I remember having a cassette. I think it was a demo. It might not have been. It might have been early recordings with Rage Against the Machine. And I remember telling everybody about it. We've never been afraid to embrace music changing, because that's the whole idea behind the music. If you listen to Too Fast for Love and then you listen to The Dirt, you're like, well, it's the same band, but it has grown, so we've never had a problem with that. My only thing is, you want to take a crack at my band. I'm probably going to say something back, but what I don't understand is why the guy's even talking about my band. He's a successful guy. Listen, let's face it, the guy flies around in private jets. He lives in a mansion in a gated community. He sells out stadiums, and then he dresses at the thrift store and tries to pretend he's some guy in the 90s. Don't take a swipe at my band, dude. I mean, I'm at least being honest." And that was his response. Okay, so basically what we have here is you have Nikki Sixx from Motley Crue, right, Jake? And then you have Pearl Jam. And Nikki Sixx came, let's say 10 years, let's just hypothetical, 10 years difference, okay? So Motley Crue, they're promoting the alternative rock because they brought Nirvana's demo tape and they were promoting it, and they didn't have to do that. They were taking them under the wing, trying to say, hey, we're going to share the spotlight with you guys, right? So now let's go, that was the 90s. So let's go 30 years later, right? Those bands that Nikki Sixx and all those other guys that took under their wing and tried to rise them above, that band is now totally dissing him and cutting him down. I want to know how you feel about that.
Well, there's things to be said on both sides. They're both kind of right in their own way. With Nikki, there is a more like of a particular aspect of music, which is theatrics, like how you perform it. You know, you got Tommy Lee on the drums doing, different, drum solos, and they're really a lot about their theatrics. And it's kind of the icing on the cake with the masterpiece. You got the nice music, you got everything, and then it's this big performance. And it's kind of saying he's not putting any effort in when he's just...
Who's not?
Eddie Veddar. He's not putting any effort in when he just shows up in, a regular old t-shirt and plays. It's like he's just kind of playing for a jam. It's not playing at a masterpiece. Does that make sense?
Not putting your 100% into the whole...
Yeah.
Like to your presentation, your whole theatrical, like Alice Cooper.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's part of the show, the experience of the band. Kind of get to know more of their maybe wild side that you can't see on every day.
Hypothetically speaking, let's say Doug was to show you how to play certain things on the guitar, right? He is showing you stuff that you're learning because he learned from other people that guided him. And then you got really good on that guitar and you got a name for yourself. And then when you have an opportunity to go on air and say something, anything, you shit on Doug.
That's not cool. You got to respect, the leaders that step before you. Sorry. And it's like paying an ode to their legacy. You know, they carved what came to your thing. Like, without punk, there would be no, or without blues, there would be no punk. If you go back, you know, it all roots from that, you know. And then without rock and stuff.
So you just started playing music during the pandemic? That's kind of when you really got into
Yeah, pretty much.
music. Okay, so you've been playing for a couple of years now. So now let's pass the mic over to Doug. Doug, give us a little bit of your history with music from when you started, and why, where your passion for music started.
To be honest, I don't know where it started. There's just always been a passion for music. My family was always musical. My mother was a concert violinist. My sister was a concert flautist. My brother played all sorts of brass instruments and the bagpipes. Phoenix.
Dog interruption. Phoenix, sit down.
Phoenix.
Okay.
Yeah.
You good?
The constant no. Phoenix? No. You gotta leave me be for a second.
We'll pause it for a sec. Okay, we've now dealt with the dog drama. Sorry, Doug. Sorry to interrupt you. We're going to start again with Doug. Doug is a seasoned musician, and I'm asking him where his passion for music came from and a little bit of background history with music concerning Doug, as he is from the whole hairband 80s generation.
So passion-wise, there was always music in my house. I can't remember a time without music. When I was 13, I guess, I bought a guitar at a garage sale and started to play. And started playing in a band when I was 14 and started playing in the bars when I was about 15. Had to get my dad to sign the permission slip for the Alberta Liquor Board to let me work as a underage minor in bars. And all the fellas that I played with were all significantly older than me. They were all in their 20s. And at that time, we played a lot of 60s, 70s rock and some of the hairband stuff as well. And
You said you have family members that also play instruments. Can you tell me what those are?
Yeah, my mom's, she was a concert violinist. My sister was a concert flautist. My brother played all the brass instruments. And, you know, even my grandfather, he was a blues and jazz guitarist.
Nice.
So, and he had recorded quite a bit. But yeah, music was always there. And for me, it didn't matter what style of music it was. It was music invokes an emotion. And as long as the music invokes an emotion, you may or may not like that emotion. But as long as it invokes the emotion, then it's sort of doing its job. So there's some genres of music that I don't enjoy because they create an angry emotion in me or a sad emotion in me, and that's not what I'm looking for. But whether it's, you know, classical, jazz, blues, rock, metal, I can find different groups that create the emotion for me that I'm looking for. And any of the music that I played in the past were those songs where I liked the emotion that they created.
So did you have any band members that went on to further their careers that you played with, like in your bands?
Yeah, our drummer, he's still playing. He's in his 60s. He's a studio musician in Vancouver. He's been on lots of famous recording artists' albums and toured with a lot of bands as well as the fill-in drummer.
Any names in mind that he recorded with?
I don't recall off the top of my head, but yeah. He's been at it for 40 years and is still professionally playing. He's still laying down tracks for other people's recordings.
Anybody else?
Most of the other guys kind of got on with real life. The lead guitarist is still playing, has never made it big, but has been continuing to play with small bands, small shows. He's still playing to this day.
So would you say in the 80s, there was a lot of effort put into your guys' shows, like the pre-setups and like just the costumes and the whole song, like everything? Like how would you
I don't know if
the
it...
80s, being a musician in the 80s to what you're seeing nowadays?
Well, nowadays, it seems like most of the musicians don't even perform live. It's just a YouTube thing. You do a little recording at home and you put it on the internet. There's a lot of pre-programmed instruments in the music that I hear. Like there are still some natural guys out there that play their own instruments and sing without auto-tune. But they're playing in the vein that I was used to from the 60s to the 80s. Right? And even in the 90s, there was lots of good bands still in the 90s. And they didn't have to be a hair band. There's a lot of the alternative stuff that I really liked. It wasn't stuff that we played because it was kind of past our time. But like a lot of good music.
You still could appreciate the art.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. If someone, and even the country music, like the country music of the 90s was...
Country rock.
Well, it was very much the rock music of the 70s. And in fact, they covered a lot of the rock songs from the 70s. And the country crowd thought it was a new song, right? Mm-hmm. So all genres of music evolve and change. And I guess country is probably like a really, really clear example of that. You look at the country from the 40s and the 50s.
Well, even like when her Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers did Islands in the Stream, completely different country than nowadays.
Yeah.
Okay, Doug, so my question to you is, after hearing this situation between Motley Crue's Nikki Sixx and Eddie Veddar's Pearl Jam, how do you feel about that? Do you remember, or do I need to...
Well, I don't understand what Eddie Veddar
This is what's going on. Both Pearl Jam and Motley Crue are getting ready to go on tour. Pearl Jam got airtime with New York Times in an interview. And in that airtime, he used it to cut down Motley Crue, like tear them down, when they're both getting ready to go on tour.
Well, as long as Motley Crue got a line in there that they're going out on tour soon, then let Eddie Vedder say whatever he wants. He's giving him good PR. Like, at the end of the day, the more people that know they're going on tour, the more people that can buy tickets. Because anybody who's going to see Motley Crue really doesn't care what Eddie Vedder has to say. If you like Motley Crue, you like Motley Crue. Because again, Motley Crue and that whole genre might have been considered outrageous because of the costumes and the show and the
big thing that Eddie Vedder was talking about was the exploiting of women with the bustiers. And...
What do you mean? Like the hair metal bands wore bustiers and studded cod pieces, spandex, had the hair done right up. Motley Crue did it too. Van Halen did it. Like Ozzy Osbourne, they all did it.
Not just the women.
It was yeah, and let's face it, the men in hair metal had way better hair and makeup than the women did.
Oh, says the guy. Says the guy with the blow dryer.
My hair was, more than halfway down my back when I was playing. Right? Because that was the show. You went to a show for an experience. You went to a show for, you wanted a certain emotion, right? Mm. And the hair metal wasn't just all the party and getting reckless songs. Or there was lots of hair metal bands with very thoughtful songs and very, emotional and moving songs.
Yeah, I love love songs.
Yeah.
Like good love songs.
But the biggest part of it was a show. And, hair metal, they had their predecessors. You look at an act like David Bowie, how much did that influence hair metal? I think quite a bit. Or Kiss. Kiss was probably the most obvious one because they did the makeup and the big hair and the boots with the teeth in them, and they put on a show. They wanted to create an experience for who came to the show, give them their money's worth. Mm-hmm. With that said, there's still a place for the earthy, grunge, alternative music as well. Like, there's a time when you want that emotion as well.
So then, would you say that Eddie Veddar could have used that airtime opportunity to salute the people that came before him as a brotherhood thing? Like, can we agree that he could have used that as an opportunity to join musicians on the same level? Or
yeah,
is this a typical thing that happens with musicians? I'm just a little startled. After the pandemic and everything everybody's been through with being suppressed and depressed, and, would you not think that if music is such a curing thing, that musicians should utilize this time right now to spread positivity and maybe help each other out and not knock each other down more than we've already been knocked down over the last 2 years?
Well, I don't know how I didn't see the whole interview, so I don't know how he got on that track, but it sounded like he was talking about his early days before he was playing, that his job was to basically be a roadie and move stuff in and out of shows.
So you think he was jealous and he was just almost like he was proving to his own ego, like, I made it? Like, that's immature.
Like it's fine for him to say that he didn't enjoy the shows that he was working for. You're there doing a job, you do your job. You don't have to like it. I don't know why he'd take a poke by name at the other bands. If he said, "Oh, these hair metal bands, I really didn't like it," but
he specifically chose a band that's about to go on tour.
Well, and that's perfectly fine. Get them all the press you can. More people will go to the show.
I just think it showed a little bit of his character that it wasn't really, I don't know. I thought it was a little egotistical myself. I thought it was inappropriate. It was not called for. That's kind of the point I was getting at. Yeah. I was wondering, as a seasoned musician, if you were to put yourself in Nikki's shoes, and you've had this band that's your family, because he clearly, and Nikki's been sober for a long time, so he's not coming from a spaced out place. Like, this is coming from his heart. And let's say Jacob here was Eddie Veddar, right? Are you getting where I'm at? So you're Nikki Sixx, Jake's Eddie Veddar. What would be your advice? If you guys were talking before now, let's say Jake was the roadie, the guy working in San Diego, and he was carrying all your equipment in, right? And, later down the road, Jake made it. He really made it. What would be your advice to him? Because Eddie would have been around Jake's age that he is now. What advice would you give to him for someone that's already made it? What would be your advice to give to him that you can ensure that 30 years down the road, he could look at you like, hey, that's a brother, rather than the way he tore him down? It was just inappropriate.
Well, to be honest, I don't know if Motley Crue and Eddie Veddar ever met.
But they were promoting the alternative rock. Okay? Yeah. We're just saying, it's not like they were against alternative rock. They were promoting the growth of music.
Yeah. And that's Nikki's point is, like, why can't you just be positive about music in general? Like, to be honest, you don't have to like it. There's music that I don't enjoy, and it's doing very well. Like, it's lots of airplay and very popular. The artists are very successful. But I don't know. I don't feel any need to waste my time and go to war with people who do that kind of music. There's tens of thousands of people out there doing music that I like. I can go on YouTube any day and be lost for the whole day of new bands, people I've never heard of before, playing music that I like. So I don't have time to worry about that. Oh my God, this music that I don't like has been successful. Like,
so would that be your advice to Jake here? Is that throughout your career, don't worry about what people expect of you? Just
if you want to do music, you do music to create an emotion, primarily an emotion for yourself. If other people like it, great, let them come along for the ride. If you find success from it, that's fantastic. But when it comes to the music and being a musician, you're really doing it for yourself. Whatever music you choose and however you want to play it, if you want to do the Yoko Ono style, it doesn't matter if nobody else gets it. They don't have to. It's yours. If you want to do it as a career, if you're stuck on that, you're more worried about making money than loving what you do, then you're going to have to bow down and do it someone else's way. Right?
That's how I feel
You can take this.
with Eddie. I feel like
Okay, repeat yourself.
that's how I feel with Eddie. I feel he's kind of bitter with some of the decisions he's made with his band. And I'm not going to go into detail or anything, but I just feel like the decisions he made him kind of like a bitter person, and he's just not in best mindset. Whereas Nikki's just, he had nothing going on. He's humbled. He's a seasoned musician. He gets how things are. He's seen how things gone before him. He sees how things have gone after him. He gets it. And I just feel that Eddie's just kind of in a bitter spot of where he's led up to.
So, Jake, where did your passion for music begin? Did anybody inspire you?
That's a hard question. Because I've listened to music from as long as I can remember. Falling asleep to Bob Marley as a kid. And then 6 or 7, I had a radio in my room, so I was listening to radio all the time. So I just eventually...
Did you ever steal music from your parents?
I stole some music when I was really young.
And what would that have been? And how old were you when you decided you were going to take music from your
parents? I was about 6, and I stole my mom's Pearl album from Janis Joplin, and I ended up playing it in my room.
So what was it about Janis Joplin? Is you being born in 2003, that's quite, it's not common for someone your age to, as a child, be so drawn to Janis Joplin. What drew you to her?
I think it was the era and the mentality where I just felt really drawn to it as a kid. When I would listen to the radio, all the older stuff would resonate with me more. My dad liked, there's 3 Doors Down, all this weird stuff, the Volbeats, all this heavy metal stuff, early 2000s. But I listened to the radio, and all of a sudden 60 stuff starts playing, like Jimi Hendrix, and I'm just really intrigued by it, and I'm just drawn to it. Same with the Janis album, same with Bob Marley. It had this mentality behind it, and this deeper connection that I really enjoyed. With Janis, it was enjoying good times, not worrying about the small things. Jimi Hendrix was just his love of music. And then you got Bob Marley, who's just about love and wanting to bring people together. And
you have quite a variety of music, because you mentioned when you were younger you really liked Michael Jackson.
Yeah. Michael Jackson was one of my favorites. When I was a kid, we had the Wii, and my mom got me the Michael Jackson Dance Experience game. It was like Just Dance, but all Michael Jackson, and I played that for hours, and I got really good at the moves. All of a sudden, my mom was pretty blown away when I was really young.
So what kind of emotion did Michael Jackson evoke within you?
He invoked the fun side of the 80s for me. When I think of Beat It, it was when good movies were coming out, and you got just good times going on, not no 90s kind of depressed teens. Everyone was happy. I found that his music was really positive, and it was just fun music. It always made me want to dance.
Your mom pushed you into the 90s quite a bit. Am I correct?
Yeah. If I had any influence in a certain genre, to be the 90s alternative sound, just because that was my mom was this is what I grew up to. And she's Chris Cornell, just deep emotion. And I like that, but that's kind of the music for me when I'm just sitting alone, wanting to think about things and just getting a creative element about deep personal issues or concerns. And then Michael Jackson's kind of more the fun side, and Jimi Hendrix is just having fun. Bob Marley's good mood, things are going good, just enjoying it, enjoying the beach that's there, the bonfire, whatever's near, just living in the moment kind of thing.
So how do you feel as a 19-year-old, since you do have quite a variety of music in your mind, how do you feel about today's music? And what would you like to see change? And why?
That's a very, very good question. I've been thinking about this a lot recently, and I think it's the chasing the dragon thing. And I've mentioned this to my mom a couple times. It's this whole internet thing of I just need one video to blow up and I become famous, and that's how I make it as a musician. And you see that with, other things like modeling and all this. And
do you think that would be a lasting success? Or
no.
Fire lit and gone up?
Well, that's why I say chasing the dragon. It's like the addict that just keeps going back for more and they're not getting it. It's like you gotta stand out in your own way, because if you just stand out trying to follow someone else, you're not going to stand out.
So do you find between Motley Crue and Pearl Jam that they both stand out in their own way?
100%. Like it's not even fair to compare them, because there's very different ends of the spectrum.
Because they both are talented.
Well, and the thing too is the mentality. Like, you got to think of the eras. There's about, let's say, 10 to 20 years difference, give or take, and that's quite a big change in mentality. You got more industrialization. So 80s, they had, cheesy movies, all this stuff. And 70s, it was becoming for that. You
Studio 54.
You had Studio 54. You had the whole porn section in New York Times. You know what I mean? Like, the 70s was kind of rough. And it was different. The 80s maybe felt a little safer. That's what I'll say. Like, you see a lot of...
Which is interesting seeing your perspective, because you're talking about times that you weren't alive for. So that's interesting to see what your brain is visualizing the past to be.
Well, I see the 70s as a lot of people, driving and going to bonfires and stuff. And I see the 80s of people, playing football in high school and being young kids. And I see the 70s as more as like kids becoming adults a lot quicker, working a lot more.
Searching for the meaning of life, because that's after the war. Right?
Yeah. And if those kids were a little bit older, like, or in late 50s, they're teenagers and they're post-war.
You're talking about my parents.
Yes. I was thinking about my grandfather, a teenager, he took welding, and as soon as he was like 18 or something, he went and worked for the rail line. And it's like, I find the 70s, you worked more. You just found a job, and if it paid, you worked. And then the 80s, people started getting more careers. And then 90s was like way different than that, because I'm not sure.
So what if I tell you my generation was, if I tell you that my generation, what we did for fun was we hung out in people's basements and had bands. And then when we got older, we were in mosh pits where we were crowd surfing and, that kind of thing. Now, then we have Doug over here, who it was the girls, and the guys in spandex and the hair blow dryers and all that fun stuff. Okay.
But there was still a big focus on 60s, 70s music.
Yeah.
In the 80s.
Well, that's what they were saying too.
The 80s was a bit of a different time, because there was a lot of fear in the 80s, right? The 80s was the time of AIDS. The 80s was the time of companies smart sizing, right? In the 60s, 70s, you got a job and you worked there till you retired, right? From probably the 40s on, like after World War II, you hired on with one company, you stayed forever. Well, in the 80s, all that changed, and everybody was outsourcing to China and India and everywhere else. So there was a lot of fear of, disease, the whole AIDS epidemic, especially when it first came out. I remember when it first came out, and they didn't know that much about it. And there was no cure. You got it, you died, period. So even in junior high school, just having a relationship was very different, because you didn't want to take that chance, right? There was a lot of fear in the news about things like that. And then, things like jobs, like, oh yeah, I'm going to school. I want to take, whatever it is, but I have no idea where that's going to go. So you had...
which is kind of where the kids are at these days,
yeah,
right now.
and there was big recession, and there was a lot of global fears. There was all sorts of wars going on.
So did you find that music was an escape in the 80s from all that? It brought some fun, a little bit of fun.
I think music has always been an escape. But yeah, like the 80s it was almost like a knee-jerk reaction to the 70s, which was excess. Like they say that the 80s was the me generation, but it really was. It was. I saw it more as the 70s. Like the
drugs.
Well, the Studio 54, the drugs, the just the excess that people lived to. And in the 80s, there was kind of a reckoning. The free love lifestyle was no longer an option. The secure job that you could have was no longer an option. Just so much had changed, and it almost seemed like the world had gotten a little bit more cutthroat. There was a lot of people that were always just trying to get to the top, climb the ladder type of idea.
So if you compare the 80s right now, what do you how is your feelings? Because you can compare that to then until now.
What we have now with what's happening in the world between COVID and Russia and recessions and inflation, it's a lot like the 80s.
That's what I was thinking.
Right. And the 90s was a knee-jerk reaction to
the 80s.
The 80s, because the 80s was very much, people trying to get ahead, a lot of fear over things. And then the 90s was almost like let's go back to simpler times. And
well, the 90s also, I got to interject there because I'm a 90s girl, right? The 90s was a big breakdown of the family unit. There's a lot of people were getting divorces, and my generation was like, F you, mom, F you, dad. You guys want to go work and ditch us. And we were really left to raise ourselves and take care of our siblings and clean house and work 2 jobs, right? Yeah. So then I'm going to step in for a second and be like, I don't want to take sides when I think of Eddie Veddar, right? Because I know I'm hard on Eddie. I've been really hard on him, but I have done a lot of research on him. And Eddie Veddar was on his own since he was 15. He was in grade 10, and he was falling asleep in class, and teachers would give him crap. And he told them, I'm taking care of myself. And he pulled out hydro bills and power bills. He was on his own. Totally on his own at 15, right? Because, I was kicked out how many times in high school? I can't even count, right? Our generation was a generation of just get out of my house, get out of my hair. Our parents wanted us out of their hair. Like, we didn't even have to do something wrong, right? And so I can see how Eddie would have been like, man, like we're suffering. But then the people in the 80s, like every generation has this residual suffering, I find. And for some reason, each generation thinks it had it worse than the next. But it's just like a form of suffering that continues and transforms in a different way. Jake?
So can I ask you both a question then?
Yeah.
Since, you're 90s, you've seen early 2000 kids, you've worked with them, you understand that.
Well, I was their boss.
You've been around 80s, teens, 90s.
No, I say Doug.
Doug, sorry. And I just gotta ask, where did, the youth of now get their heads so twisted on backwards? I find myself very isolated in this circumstance that I see things completely 180 than these I'm offended people or the woke or these people that are entitled. Like I had some girl just about 18, she was out of high school at least, and she just walked out of her job because she didn't like the manager, telling her something she was doing wrong. And it's like, where does this sense? That wasn't an option in my generation. Where is the sense of entitlement, and where's the sense of just not thinking to work for things? And
the difference between, especially the 80s, but the 90s as well, is the internet.
I was going to say, I'm so glad we agree. Right? It was the internet, because you know what? Sorry, Doug. My generation, we didn't have cell phones. We just knew be home at curfew. There was no cell phones. And go ahead, Doug. Go ahead. I agree with you.
Yeah, and the same thing. My generation, because I remember the 70s well, I remember the 80s well, the 90s. you got 3 channels on TV. There was 1 TV in your house. Well, maybe 2, depended on, how fancy you were. You pretty much
and
watched.
If it wasn't black and white, you were rich.
Yeah. If your parents were home, you watched what they wanted to watch. It wasn't, you could watch whatever you wanted to.
You only had cartoons on Saturdays.
Yeah. News was, like, the news that you got was like the 6 o'clock news that was on the TV in the house, or a newspaper. Right? So, communication in most ways was one direction. You watch TV, you could listen to what the TV said. On the internet now, you can go and you look at your feed, which is tailored to what you've looked at before. So they're already trying to go with whatever your opinion is.
The algorithm.
Yeah. It's made to agree with what you already think. And whatever you click on gives you other links to other stories or sites or blogs that even further support what you think. And it doesn't really matter whether it's true or false, or a little true and a little false. The internet supports people in whatever they want to believe in the first place.
So can I ask you
We're in the middle of an information war.
Can I ask you a follow-up question? So with the internet and stuff, do you think that's altered the minds of reality in you speaking, like they can be kind of split personality, like they have this personality of being this person on the internet versus who they actually are, or
alter ego is what you're
even
talking
alter ego.
They're anonymous on the internet, right? You can say whatever you want.
Yeah,
you're anonymous in that area. And there's just so much more free access to anything you ever wanted. Like, you're 19 now. When did you see your first porn? You had the internet.
Let's say 12.
Yeah, and you're probably a late bloomer at that.
Probably.
Right? I talked to my son, well, in grade, I don't know, 3 or 4. As soon as one kid had a phone, they were figuring out what to Google for porn, right? And does that change how people have relationships and treat each other?
Exactly.
Right? Back in when I was your age, there were no dating sites. Like, yeah, you could put in a classified ad, or you could go to a singles mixer, or go to a dance.
Those call lines. You used to have the call lines, because we used to call in when we were young and pretend to be older. There was the dating call lines.
I think that started in the 90s, but that was like a porn service. They talk dirty to you for $12.99 a minute or something.
It was free.
Well, it was free.
It was free.
Well, free for the women.
Yeah, it was for the women. We were girls and thought we were women.
Yeah. So just how relationships were, and because back in that day where you had to meet people face to face, each person, male or female, had to sort of go through an interview, an inspection kind of thing. You had to put on a good impression for anything to progress farther. And now you just swipe to the left or the right. I don't know which it is. And someone, shows up in a taxi.
Hey, before you talk, I have a question for both you guys. How, since you have the microphone, Doug, and then Jake, you can answer this. How do you think music affected the dating scene in your generation, Doug, in the 80s?
Well, that's where you met the girls, right?
How did it affect the way you thought of dating? Of relationships? How did your idea of relationships, because it is affected through music, there was a lot of love songs and whatever. How do you think music affected your idea of dating in the 80s?
Well, I listened to multiple genres, right? So I did listen to the 60s, 70s stuff, but even of the 80s stuff, I listened to the traditional rock, I listened to country, I listened to the hair metal.
What kind of boyfriend did it make you, is my question. Romantic,
music-wise,
sensitive?
yeah.
Would you respect women? Because they're trying to say the 80s sexualized women. And I want to know.
In some ways, but usually in the way that the hair metal band stuff, it wasn't all sexualized, but yeah, there was a portion of that where it was exposing the woman's wild side over the romantic side, because that existed too. Like,
So did you look at women like they were objects, or did you still respect women?
still respect women.
Okay, now let's pass it over to this generation right now. Let's talk about how men feel about women through music now, and if they respect women, and why you answered the way you answered.
Well, and that's a very good question as well, because it's changed a lot. Even 2009, when I first started listening to music I was growing up with. You look at Eminem and some of the early rap, it's about being the big tough guy. I'm the guy who's working 9 to 5 and I'm trying to hustle to get my way up. And then it transitions to, missing your girl, texting her over the phone.
Okay, I know. I'm going to get you a little bit back on topic here. Do you find your music inspires women to respect themselves in your generation? Do you think the music of your generation inspires guys of your generation to respect women? Or is everybody just not respecting anybody, is my question.
I don't think anyone's really respecting anyone. And it's only happened in the last 5 years. All of a sudden all this rap music was oh, my girl's cheating on me, I'll just do better. It's or she's probably out with another man, I'm doing better, I got 2 or 3 hoes. It's some of this music now.
And with that said,
Come closer, Doug.
think of songs from the 60s. What do you think of Hey Joe with Jimi Hendrix?
Well, hey, tell me that.
It's about her cheating, right?
Yeah.
He's gonna go kill her.
Yeah.
He's going to go kill her, right.
Yeah, but I guess it was more subtle. Now it's just
Put 2 bullets in her head and...
Well, that's this really hardcore rap. Then some of this rap's just I got it's flexing all of a sudden. It's I got so many girls hit me up, you're just worth nothing.
So, Jake, I noticed a lot just from my, being a kitchen manager for so long and working with your generation. What is with the trend of all these girls cutting? Do you think they're cutting, these cutters? Do you think that has any reflection on the music, or do you think that the music nowadays is affecting the mental health overall of your generation, is my question. And why?
Yeah, so we talked about the rappers that are all about flexing and not getting their feelings hurt, but then there's some rappers that are really emotional and they're talking about wanting to die all the time, and it's this really depressing mood. And I've listened to some of it; it's really messed up.
So are you
rappers talking about hanging themselves, blowing their brains, taking pills, doing all this really suicidal stuff, cutting to not feel pain, and it plays on their mind. And these girls, I guess, kind of let it get to their head in a weird way. All this depressing music let them bring them down to this level. They were, mediocre, listen to some pop music, and then they listen to this, they get into rap, also this sad rap, and they just get brought down, and then it just kind of allows them to make this feel okay.
For you, Jake. My question for you is someone who's trying to break out as a new musician, and you do have a talent. I've heard it. You play the electric, the acoustic, a little bit of the harmonicas, and you just bought yourself a saxophone.
Yeah.
So you're serious about getting into music. You really are. I know that. I've talked to you many times over this. So as someone that's trying to break out in 2022 into the music world, what challenges are you facing? Do you find it hard to figure out how to break out and how to get through to your generation on an emotional level? What challenges you... And can you please ask Doug for advice on what he would give someone your age on how to break out in this whole technology world where people are so emotionally asleep?
Ooh, that's tough.
Want me to re-ask you that?
No, I'm thinking about it. What are some of the challenges?
of trying to break out? Do you even know what genre? Can you create your own? Is it time to create your own? Is it time for a new genre of music?
I
Can
think
we bring it back to the basics, like none of this electronical sound, voice changing crap.
I think it's a mix of both of those things. So you want to bring it back with some more acoustic, kind of mellow 90s and 60s, nice acoustic sessions, maybe some electric. I think it's just time to bring it back to the basics of, like, love everyone. Like, people are in a world of, I'm trying to get to the top, and that's this mentality with the rap. And
stepping on each other's toes to get above.
yeah, like, I'll stab you in the back, stab you in the back, and I'll walk all over you to get to the top of the chain. And it's like, we need to remind each other that we're all in this together. And some of the hardest challenges are auto-tune. I mean, I'm so scared to use my natural voice because when I listen to other music, it's like, it all sounds the same, and I'm like, my voice sounds so different because it's natural.
But isn't that different? Isn't that how people stand out?
It is.
Like, if you think of Queen, Freddie Mercury. Also, my head just went Freddie Queen. But if you think of Freddie Mercury, you think of Florence and the Machine. You think of so many people with different voices. Who else? Oh, Chris Cornell. Like, I always go back to Chris Cornell, but
Neil Young,
like
Ed
Sheeran, Bob Dylan, Chris Isaac, Eric Clapton, Tina Turner.
But the biggest thing about all of those musicians,
You're so quiet, Doug.
is they didn't plan to be famous. They played music they liked that made them feel a certain way. Especially, you look at a guy like Neil Young. He would never win a singing competition. Johnny Cash, not going to happen.
I love Grandpa Cash.
Yeah, and that's why. Like, it's not about creating a new genre or fitting in a certain box.
So do you believe
Hold on, let Doug finish.
You play what you enjoy. If that becomes successful, great. If not, enjoy what you play. Because none of the people who made it big were trying to fit in a little box. Like, there have been bands created. We talked about Milli Vanilli before, where it's fake stuff and it doesn't last. Like, music is about creating an emotion. If other people come along for the ride, great. The only advice I'd give you is, one, stay true to what you enjoy doing, because you won't be able to convey an emotion of something that you're really not into.
or can't relate to, right?
Yeah. And play live. Like, do whatever it is you want to do. Experiment with stuff. Like,
Billy Joel and Piano Man. Piano Man, you didn't see that video. The video I made on Piano Man. Piano Man was about him. He was improvising about singing about the people in the bar, and it's still a song that was in, I think, 71.
And they redid a music video.
But this is just an improv. Like you said, do what you love. And he was sitting there just observing the bar.
Look at Black Crowes.
Hold on, he was observing the bar, and he made a world famous song of his observations because he was doing what he loved. Okay, so Doug, what advice would you give for a 19-year-old in this computer generation, and he wants to keep his natural voice and his natural talent? He just wants to be him. What's your advice to him?
Play live. Play live wherever you can. So it's on a street corner, and the jam sessions they have at some of the bars. The internet's full. They have enough. Even the YouTube stuff that I watch, it's of young guys playing live somewhere
At a small bar or something like that.
The one, well, it's one guy, and he's in college, and he'll get other friends from college to come back up, and they'll do a band like that. They're usually playing in a park. They just kind of walk in and set up wherever, or they sit down on a park bench with 3 acoustic guitars and someone with a tambourine and a conga, and they just play. And sometimes they're playing cover tunes, and sometimes it's the stuff that they wrote, and they just have a joy in what they do, and people gather around. I doubt any of them are making any money on the internet. I bet they get way more loonies in their guitar case than they ever get from YouTube. Because even the ultra famous top recording artists, all the music's digital now. There's no more buying a cassette or a CD.
I miss looking at the covers and reading the lyrics, and I would tape the covers up on my wall.
Yeah. But unless you're someone like Drake, who has the highest amount of hits, you make no money off the internet stuff anyhow. So if it's something you want to do as a career, you play live. The bands that are successful out there right now, it's not from record sales because they get nothing of that anymore. It's their live shows.
So record sales used to be...
Here, Pat.
So thinking about like even early rap, like when they had record studios and all that, and like that was the way to go, right? Was records back in the day, or...
Oh, record, CD, cassette, whatever the medium was at the time.
And so now it just relies on going back kind of to like maybe let's say like the 30s where they're just playing live and just kind of enjoying the moment.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
It's an experience. It's about having an emotion, right? That's what music is. But if you want to perform. If you want it as a career, perform. If you're good at it, to do a video of a live performance, if you really want to have something on the internet, but the internet's really not going to make you any money. Everyone downloads for free or next to free, or they steal the song, or the artist gets nothing. Like, and that's one of my biggest worries with the music industry is there isn't a living to be made doing it anymore, right? Unless you perform live. And to be honest, if you want to convey emotion and have fun and get immediate feedback, playing live is the only way. You know, you can record all the videos you want, put them on the internet, and you have no idea how they settle out with anybody because you can't see them. You can't see your audience. Play where you have an audience. That gives you that
point. It's your critics.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't, I'm having this ding, 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 ding.
And that's where the energy in music comes from as well. It's the audience. Like any band will tell you, their best shows was because it had the best audience. They got so much energy from the audience. They played so much better, right?
That's why I love live music. Okay, I got a question for both you guys. Okay, my question for both you guys. Okay, before I ask the question, who wants to go first? Who wants to go first?
Okay.
You'll go first? Doug will go first. The seasoned musician will go first. Doug, and you better answer this wisely. Just kidding. Doug, what is your vision for music in the next 5 years? Where would you like to see it at 5 years from now?
Well, like I said before, I'd like to see more live performances. It's gotten actually a lot better in the last 10 or 15 years, with the exception of COVID, of more bands playing live and more just regular places like little pubs and little bars having live music in them. As far as like genre of music, I'd prefer to see more people playing their own instruments and singing with their own voice.
Mm-hmm.
But
Doug, do you find that the frequency with all this stuff is affecting people? Like their headaches? Do you think is all this new, like when we had live music, I wasn't having the headaches like I'm having now. And I wonder if it's all the frequency.
I don't know. But again, music...
It feels soulless. It feels soulless.
Yeah, but music creates an emotion. And it's just whether you like...
It's creating angst for me.
Yeah. So it all depends on whether you like the emotion.
I don't like I don't like the frequency that's coming out. It's giving me headaches.
It gives you a different emotion. It gives you angst. And there's all sorts of different genres being played right now. We
No,
don't
the
have,
radio alone. Like I just keep re-listening to my old stuff because I can't even entertain this new stuff.
yeah. And I've heard some good stuff out, but I've saw it on YouTube, not on the radio.
I know, and it's like the really, really good. Like my brother, he's an awesome musician. You saw his video, you heard his song, and you know he got what, over 700 and something views. I was shocked because that should be on the radio over and over and over again. It's so good. I'm going to be interviewing him on Sunday, but can you pass that to Jake? Jake, I want you to tell me what your vision or what you would like to see. What do you want to see the music industry 5 years from now? Do you want to see like more of a Woodstock movement, or like more people joining, like using music as a way to join people together in love and peace? Or what's your vision? And how are you going to contribute to that?
So it comes down to 3 genres for me. It's folk, blues rock, and like Woodstock era, the peace, love, because we need lots of love and affirmation, because this world is crumbling, and we need to know that we are loved, and we need to know that there's light at the end of the tunnel, and that we got to keep pushing forward, but as a team, because we've been fighting each other so long. It's not going anywhere. We're not getting anywhere. Second, like, acoustic, it's always nice to just have an acoustic campfire, kind of feel the atmosphere, just relaxing. Bluesy, you need to know that hardworking men and women out there, you gotta, remember that they are hardworking for their loved ones, and they're working hard. And what was the last one I said?
You said there were 3. You said there was blues. Oh, there was.
Oh, and the folk. The folk kind of, for me, it's like relaxing, and it's like community. It's all about community. It's
like family feeling.
Yeah, like a family. That's perfect. Whenever I hear folk, I always hear like a big group of people, kind of like a church hymn or whatever, just singing and enjoying it. Sorry. We need a lot more of that community built with working together and working hard.
Okay. So you guys, I think we're probably running past an hour at this point. Can I ask you for a favor, Doug? If Jake grabs his guitar, can you play something for us?
I don't know. Let's see.
I think that's a yes. We'll pause you. Jake, would you like to tell Doug what kind of guitar you just passed him that you treated yourself to?
A Johnny Cash blacked out Martin.
Yeah.
It's called the DX Johnny Cash, something like that.
So Doug's going to play a little something for us here.
Use that one.
Good song. Oh, I love this song. No.
I'm not sure what that one's doing. It's just a different sound. Trying to think of what else.
CCR. What one did you play? Eric Clapton? You've played a lot for me. We get one song. Come on. This is Green Day, isn't it? This is good. Nice. I love that an 80s guy is playing alternative rock. Perfect way to end this. Now he's got the guitar in his hand.
No, don't remember that.
We gotta fix that.
Yeah, the action's a little too high for that one.
We gotta fix that.
That was the girl song back in the
I remember that. So.
That was the-
I love you is all that. More Than Words by what?
Extreme.
Extreme. That was it.
That
Is that
was
how
the
should
enough.
we leave it?
Yeah.
That was the enough talking girls. We want to get a little action.
Little action.
And that's how we're ending it.
That's how you get more than words out of this guy. Can we just leave it on a Beatles song? Because you played it. Was it yesterday you played?
Oh.
You played me. Yeah.
Don't remember it on the.
All right. We've hit past our hour, but that was. Thank you, Doug. Now he's playing. He's not going to put it down. And then I won't stop. Okay. Thank you, Jake. Thank you, Doug. Thank you for your opinions. I think we can all agree on one thing. Doug, we need to talk.
It's just background.
I think we can. I have something. I think we can all agree on one thing. No, in all seriousness here. Can we just stop talking? Okay, in all seriousness, I think we can agree. I was rough on Eddie Veddar. I was. But I appreciate his music. I just think that we just need more love and peace in the world. And that's what it comes down to. And I think Motley Crue's awesome. I just love them. So I think we can all agree they're both very talented bands. A very talented band from the 80s, a very talented band from the 90s. And the bottom line is, if anything, this is the time to spread peace, love, forgiveness, and compassion. And, help each other build up rather than tear each other down. I think kind of is the moral of this whole story. So thank you, seasoned musician Doug. And thank you, little grasshopper Jake. I appreciate your guys' time, and I appreciate your guys' voices being heard. So thanks for coming. Do this again? Yeah? Do you want one more?
Had to put some of the 80s here.
Are you going to say goodbye, Doug?
Goodbye, Doug.
You got to say, please like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more upcoming videos.
Too old to remember all that.
Yeah. All right. Sweet dreams, everybody. And grand rising to the rest of you. Go crank some music. That's what life's all about. Anyway, love Sarah. Bye.